Good evening, everybody, and welcome to what is already episode 5.
Episode 5?
Episode 5.
You kidding me?
That's right, of Metrics and Mayhem.
I feel old.
My name is Earl Phillips. I am the Metrics of the organization, and if you are on Facebook Live with us right now, on my left-hand side, my better half, that would be the Mayhem, Dominic Melchior III. Dominic, how are you today, buddy?
What's up, friends and family? How's everybody doing out there today?
Hope everybody.
Mr. Phillips, how are you doing?
Oh, I am fantastic, Dom. It's always good to be back here on a Wednesday night where we're recording live at the Metrics and Mayhem studios in beautiful West Deptford, New Jersey. We'd like to start out first by reminding our listeners of our social media outlets that you can get in touch with us at. You can get us on Facebook at Metrics and Mayhem and also on Twitter at Metrics and Mayhem. You can search me at EP3 Metrics. And Dom, I believe you have a handle as well.
DM Hustle 33 at twitter.edu.
Twitter.edu.
I believe it's a Stanford. It's a Stanford email address because I went there.
You couldn't get into Duke?
No, I went there.
Got it.
I went there once. I got a T-shirt in the gift shop and I left.
That's a classy way to take up Stanford for sure. We're going to open up things. As those of you who listen to us know, we're going to have a few segments throughout the podcast. We're going to get into our opening rant, our opening message in a minute. We also have a DraftKings contest that we're running. We have an Against the Spread Super Contest, which I can't wait to talk about that. And we also,
I got to come up with some better picks there for the.
It has been a slow start for sure.
It's been rough.
It's kind of been balanced though because obviously the Dough Pie has been going a lot stronger. That's our own private fantasy football league, which we will get to towards the end of the segment. But to get things underway, Dom, if you're all set to get rolling here,
let's get going. Let's get to it.
One of the things we were talking about before we get into our contest and everything, I brought up the idea of the athlete. And should the athlete in today's world be viewed as a role model, whether it's for kids or for parents or whoever it is? And given social media how it is right now, Dom, I'm curious as the athlete of the group, your thoughts about how the athlete is viewed as a role model in society today.
Okay, this is pretty easy for me. Being the athlete of our group of friends, I subscribe to the Charles Barkley University of Thinking.
And is that Auburn? Is that Auburn University?
It may be Auburn.
Okay.
Auburn. But I am not a role model. I don't believe athletes should be role models. Parents should be role models. Friends, loved ones, people around you all the time should be role models. If you are that lazy and that inept as a human being and as a parent to say to your child, see what that guy did? Don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Ever, then you deserve every thing that you get as a parent, good and bad.
If you do have a role model out there, though, obviously, and I agree with you completely on that perspective. The parents obviously come first. But if you're looking at an athlete today, who is somebody that you would relate to as?
I mean, it's you know my love for Tim Tebow.
I do know your love for
I
Tim
love
Tebow.
him. But I would never want my kid to emulate Tim Tebow.
Why is that?
I'd want my kid to be his own man.
But if he had Tim Tebow-esque attributes about him.
Well, I would hope that it was me and not somebody on a TV screen that allowed my child to be like a person like Tim Tebow. And do you think that there was anybody on TV that Tim Tebow's parents goes, you know what, Tim, you should be like that guy. You should be exactly like Reggie Jackson.
Yeah.
I don't really think that Tim
Dad,
Tebow's
I'm not
parents.
black. I can't do that.
I can't do that. I'm not. Well, he is left-handed. That's right.
Yeah, he's got that.
But yeah, there's no reason why anybody should say, look at that TV screen, be like that guy. Because you never know. What you see on TV screen is just a guy playing a sport. You don't know what he's like in real life.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. We can read into, I guess, whether it's any kind of the media interaction that he has, and that's really all we know, what goes behind closed doors. I mean, obviously, as we found out with some of the athletes, what they do in their personal lives might not be anybody's cup of tea. They look great in front of a camera or on the screen on the field, but that's kind of the limit as to what we want to know about them.
Wasn't OJ the model person of the 1970s and 80s? Mm-hmm. I mean, no, everybody loved OJ.
Mm-hmm.
Until he started killing people.
Yeah, well, that'll kind of do it.
That'll do it.
There's a podcast that I listen to, Beating the Bets, it's called. It's an ESPN podcast. If anybody's into this stuff, I'm sure you guys are listening to it already. But there was an episode over the summer where Nick Bakay, do you remember Nick Bakay? He was an old ESPN guy.
I do.
He anyway, I didn't realize he was doing writing for some ABC sitcoms or whatever. And he was talking about a time where he got a chance to play golf with O.J. Simpson. He had the opportunity to. And it was a great story. If anybody's into the O.J. Simpson thing and you haven't heard the Nick Bakay story, I won't ruin it for you. It's definitely one to check out. It's on Beating the Bets podcast, which is definitely one that we subscribe to over here. But getting into the whole athlete as the role model thing, obviously this past weekend in the NFL was a pretty profound week. Let's say a week that we haven't seen really anything like this before at this magnitude, or maybe with this much of a scrutiny under it. And everybody's got opinions on it. So to dive right into it with the national anthem and how that was handled by different different teams across the NFL and owners and players and individuals and all that. Maybe just some opening thoughts about how that was handled, or your opening thoughts about that.
I don't think anybody really knew how to handle this. It popped up so quickly. What did it pop up on a Friday?
Yeah.
It popped up on a Friday, and then Sunday they had to play. So you're scrambling if you're a team and an organization. Imagine an organization dealing with people who this really pissed off, and then people who it really didn't affect at all, and then you're supposed to come out as a unified front. I can't imagine anybody going, yeah, I got this. I got a great idea on how we should do this.
Yeah.
I mean, it was definitely something that I don't think anybody got right, and I don't think there was a way to get it right.
You bring up a really interesting point, and I hadn't thought about it until you worded it that way, where something comes out from the president, and not to take sides or anything like that, but just the blanket statement that he made. It's going to affect different people different ways, and it's very difficult for everybody to say the words, I understand how you feel, because we don't necessarily understand how everybody feels. We have a view of maybe how we feel about the situation and how maybe we think other people interpret it, but really we only know how we individually feel about a situation.
Exactly. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts on this are, I really think that everybody has, one of the freedoms that our country has fought for is the freedom to choose what we want to do. When I see people kneel for the anthem or maybe not salute the flag or whatever it is, I really don't, in my opinion, I really don't get the sense that people are saying F you to the people who have provided me this freedom in this country. I don't think it's about that. I think it's about something bigger. And I think that it's good that it's being talked about, Dom. I think one of the worst things that we can do is when we have issues like this in society, we can't talk about it.
The hardest thing in our society right now is to openly talk about race, because you're either ill-informed or you're coming from a place where you don't want to be informed and you're ill-hearted.
Exactly.
So, in my opinion, this whole anthem thing was hypocritical from the start. And it's hypocritical from the fact that the people who got pissed off, the people who got mad about all of this, cared more about the symbols of our country rather than their countrymen. Now that was the thing that pissed me off. If you love America and you love that everything America stands for, but you can't honestly say to yourself, some of my own countrymen are suffering, then you're a hypocrite. Then you really are. You can't sit there and say, because I have friends and I have even family members who go, oh, they're just whining crybabies. No, they're not. They're honest. They're speaking honestly about what's happening to them in their own lives. And if you can't have empathy for your countrymen, then it doesn't matter what you think about the symbols of the country. Because I love America because of everything America stands for. Most importantly, its people, not its symbols, not its history. It's people, and that was the most laughable thing that I saw, people getting pissed off, saying that they desecrated the country and the flag and the troops. Like, no. The troops, the people who are protesting, the people who have fought and died, they're all the people of America, which have made up America. So you got to care more about the people than you do about the symbols of America, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's very well said. I mean, I know it's bad for podcast radio, but I have to completely agree with how you were. That was very eloquent. What do you think's next, Dom? I mean, when we go into the next week coming up, I know there was a report out on ESPN Chalk about Aaron. I don't know if you saw this, about Aaron Rodgers asking all the Packers fans to kind of lock arms.
I think it's diluting the the original issue that Colin Kaepernick brought to attention.
Right, exactly.
He was kneeling for one specific reason: police brutality against African American males in America.
Yes.
Now it's about unity against the views of Donald Trump or the views of certain select members of society. It's diluting the original point. Like, there's still an issue with police brutality against minorities in this country. There just is, and we're getting farther and farther away from the original idea of why Colin Kaepernick took a knee or sat down in the first place, then got convinced to take a knee by a Green Beret. So it's taking on this life of its own, and the people who don't want to have this uncomfortable conversation couldn't be happier, because it's protesting in itself and talking about things like this is uncomfortable. It's supposed to be uncomfortable because we're supposed to talk about things that, will change the status quo. And if you change the status quo for some people who benefit from the status quo, they're going to get pissed.
And not as uncomfortable as watching things like what happened in Virginia, with the raid that happened down there. Watching that stuff is much more uncomfortable than having a conversation. And that's just the way it is.
Conversations need to be had, and they'll always need to be had.
But you bring up a good point too about the diluting of it. The more that we go, the more people that kind of get involved. You're right. The issue is getting further and further away from where we started with this whole thing to begin with. And I would hate to see everybody's message about locking arms and all this. We're missing the point. We're not addressing an issue that Colin Kaepernick, who at first I was completely in a different place on that side of the argument. I started out thinking that Kaepernick was ridiculous for doing what he was doing, and I say that coming out as a white male. I don't know what it's like to be a black male in America. I don't have that perspective. I don't know what it's like. I know we've had this conversation before. I don't know what it feels like to be, I don't want to say a minority, but to be somebody where I didn't feel like I was necessarily welcome or felt completely safe. I've never really felt like that. The more that I've listened to friends with different perspectives, yourself included, it's really changed my whole perspective on this situation. And I guess that's, a good thing, maybe coming in with one side of it, thinking that I was right, but listening to other people have really kind of changed my perspective on the whole thing. But, getting back to the national anthem itself, a question that I wanted to raise to you, your thoughts, the national anthem itself, does it still have a place in sports?
As long as the Department of Defense is paying the sports leagues $50 million a year to play the national anthem, it will always have a place in sports. It'll have a place in capitalism. Mm-hmm. But yeah, to answer your question with more of a from the heart opinion, I think once we get to a place where we can all be honest with each other as a country to our own countrymen, then we can all stand behind the national anthem and say, yeah, we may have messed up, but we got it right eventually.
We earlier on today when I was preparing for the podcast, and I knew we were going to talk about this national anthem, I went back to the Super Bowl where Whitney Houston sang the national anthem, right? And that's Desert Storm. And
not Aretha Franklin, which took her 2.5 minutes to sing the national anthem. The overhit bad on that one. Sure.
But man, it's unbelievable to think how different it's come in such a short amount of time, from. And
you have to think we're only a country that's 250 years old.
Yes, we are very. I
think a lot of people forget that when you talk about the great nations in this world, they're thousands of years old. Mm-hmm. Japan, China, England, they've gone through civil war after civil war until they finally got to the point where they're like, all right, we got it right. Yeah. Maybe this is just one of those things where we have to just go through this, talk about it, and then we'll get it right.
But talk about it, I agree, is the key word. That's what everybody is right now. Social media up, everybody's maybe talking more than they are listening.
And they're talking more than they're doing.
Yeah, right, exactly. It's very easy. It's very easy just to go out. Everybody can figure out what they want to say before they click post or share. We all have the ability to really formulate an educated opinion, and if we do or if we don't, well, regardless if we hit share, it's out there for the world to see.
It's out there forever.
Yeah, so...
let's get into some. Now that we've talked about that, which I'm glad we did, let's get into some good stuff.
You want to get into some football?
Let's get into some football.
All right. Well, we're gonna take a. Why don't we take a quick break? We'll get lined up for our football stuff. We'll clip this segment right here.
Sure.
And we'll start up for the next one.
I need a new beer anyway.
We're gonna get the man all
sponsored
set up
by Sam Adams Cherry Wheat, a crisp and slightly sweet brew.
And I'm working on a Guinness myself right now. Again, we are Facebook Live right now. This is our first time doing this, giving it a shot. So we'll be right back from the Metrics and Mayhem studios. That was our opening rant, and we'll be back with what do you want to do first, Dom? You want to
I want to do some heartbreakers that we may see, because that's going to take me right into my against the spread picks.
All right, cool. So we'll do the eliminator pool first, and then we'll roll back in from there. All right, so we'll be back in a minute with the Metrics and Mayhem eliminator pool, and we'll be going on from there. We'll be right back. Thank you.